The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got all that he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth into wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to become in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him out to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set up and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against you and against heaven. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against you and against heaven. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let us have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has been back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has been squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him.' 'My son,' said the father, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we've had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' This is the gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. Today, rather than preach my own words, I'm going to be reading a few essays, actually 2 essays rather, from the book Dear God, I'm Gay, Thank You by Joel Wirtgen. For those of you who don't know, Joel Wirtgen was one of 3 seminary students at PLTS back in the 80s who came out to defy the ELCA policy at the time. Joel Wirtgen unfortunately never became a pastor himself and later died in the 90s from AIDS. So this is in honor of him. A little prologue. 3 gays certified for Lutheran ministry from the Wire Service Report dated February 24th, 1988. In a rare and perhaps unprecedented event, 3 Lutheran seminarians who publicly declared their homosexuality have sought and have been given certification for the ministry, church officials say, on Tuesday. The 3, all students at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary in Berkeley, were certified for call and ordination to the ministry in separate actions by their respective church authorities shortly before the official creation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America on January 1st, 1988. All will graduate in May. While the issue of homosexuals in the ministry has sharply divided other denominations, it is expected to be a source of bitter debate when the United Methodist Church meets in its General Conference in April. Lutheran officials appear to be taking the situation in stride. All 3 are highly gifted, said Reverend Michael Coper White, an assistant to the bishop for Lyra Miller of the Northern California, Northern Nevada Synod. We expect to give them the same kind of support in finding a call as other graduating seminarians. 2 of the seminarians are Californians, Jeff Johnson of Lancaster and James Lancaster of Westminster, and were members of the Lutheran Church in America before that denomination merged into the ELCA. A third seminarian, Joel Workin of Walcott, North Dakota, was a member of the American Lutheran Church, also a partner in the merger that formed the ELCA. All three described themselves as openly gay and portrayed themselves as such when presenting themselves for certification, the first step toward ordination in Lutheranism. Under Lutheran rules, after certification and graduation from seminary, the three must be called or offered a job by local congregations. Ordination is accomplished when called by a local congregation. Caroline Lewis, the spokesperson for the ELCA, headquartered in Chicago, said the church is still studying the matter and does not have an official statement on the issue. And it breaks my heart to say this next part, but it was not until 2009 that those who did eventually get ordained extraordinarily were recognized by this denomination. Decades later. The first essay I'd like to read is called The Prodigal Church, which is based off our gospel passage for today. Again, Joel Workin's words, not mine. Usually, when we hear the story of St. Luke's story of God's grace in the parable, The Prodigal Child, we are listeners that are cast out of that title row. Not a bad part, actually, since there are stars of the shadow, since as stars of the show, we get to sanctify all our carnal desires and still have things to work out back home on the home end. A sort of have your cake and eat it too role. And that great swine scene, I will arise and go to my father. The alternative, of course, is to be cast out into the villain's role and play the big bad elder sibling who will not cut anyone a break. It's not a bad part either. Anyway, as I say this, that's usually how it works out. Usually. In the story of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer individuals in the church, however, the customary roles are reversed. The church, God's understudy, which usually retains itself the role of warm and waiting parent, is now the one that has taken the journey to a far-off country. In this drama, with the church off living its carnal and sinful life, LGBTQ Christians are suddenly thrust into the role of forgiving parent and are often left standing, if I may use this rural image, by the mailbox at the end of a long driveway, waiting for the prodigal to come home. What does it mean for the church's LGBTQ people to play the part that is often overlooked, mostly an active character of forgiving parent? If prodigality and hospitality have both been taken away, what is left to do? The parable answers back quite simply, wait. Imagine, says Kierkegaard, a well-compounded word which lacks the last word. There is only the first word and the hyphen. What about this hyphen, this dash? What shall this attitude toward this incomplete and broken thing? Or what shall we say or do, and what shall we think about the sentence which is cut off midway as the dash indicates? How shall we indicate that makes sense of this piece of thing? It is a sentence, a fragment of an unfinished sentence. The former is dead and past forgivable. The latter has potential and waits completion. What a difference there is, says Kierkegaard, between a fragment and an unfolding sentence. How then shall the waiting of sexual minorities view their relationship with the church? There has been a break, a resounding no from most of the prodigal church to any form of partnership or familiar bond. But it is not no period or no dash dash. No period means the relationship is over. Toss that fragment as a thing away and it is history. Dead. Period. Go back into the house and stop worrying about the ungrateful kid. No dash dash, on the other hand, means that the relationship is incomplete, unfinished. It means there's more to be said after the dash, no matter how long the dash takes to intervene the silence. No dash dash means believing, hoping, and trusting that the relationship will one day be restored and set right, that the prodigal will come back home. It means standing and waiting for the church to come back to its senses, never giving in, never giving up, never walking back inside and shutting the door on a hopeless situation. Kierkegaard was right. What a difference there is between a fragment and an unfinished sentence. Make no mistake about it, no period is the answer given by many in the world and the church to God's LGBTQ children. These naysayers want a complete and total break. They look forward not to reestablish the familiar ties. Loving and waiting parents, however, do not take no period for an answer, even when the church seems inevitably lost and dead. Love does not take no period for an answer. Even after years of anguish, longing, and standing by the mailbox and scanning the horizon for the prodigal's return, love does not take no period for an answer. Love for LGBTQ plus Christians is the power of punctuation, the power to turn no period into no dash dash, and to wait for the words of reconciliation which will one day follow. Now don't get me wrong. Now don't get the wrong impression. I do not think that the sole word of the good news to lesbian, gay, transgender people is this: here, wait. Hardly so. Yet wait is one of the scripture words. Hope or believe may sound religious, but it all amounts to the same waiting in the end. Love hopes. Love believes. Love waits. Yes, even for the church, love waits. For all eternity, as long as the no dash dash remains incomplete, love waits. It is curious to note in the parable of the prodigal, wises up with anybody's assistance or advice, save the swine's perhaps. Will the church do the same? But we do have the power of punctuation, of waiting, of hoping. We also, as the grieved party, have the power of forgiveness. But whereas one may forgive, it takes two to be reconciled. Childish as the church may seem and act, it is not a child. LGBTQ Christians, therefore, await a church that comes home as an adult. Not happily, perhaps, not jumping and skipping, even with some fear and concern, but it's on its own will, confessing with its lips and heart that I have sinned against you and against God. A church which is dragged home, seduced home, or tricked home does not await the end. No, we do better by waiting expectantly, loving, hopefully by the mailbox for a repentant return, rather than playing juvenile games about reconciliation, policy, and the like. It is not easy to hope and to believe in a future reconciliation when a loved one says, no, period, and blithely walk away. It is not easy to stand ready to forgive and to welcome home with open arms. Personally, I would rather be like the star and squander the family fortune. That sounds a lot like more fun. The parable, however, says, hope, believe, wait. There is more to be said. The show is not over yet. Just you wait. The other essay is entitled Grace Unbounded. My mother was there. Yes, my mother. She was there, and she said it was nice, which is quite a compliment coming from a North Dakota Lutheran. She thought the music was good, and I could tell it meant a lot to see her son and his gay brothers and lesbian sisters standing proud and sure, anchored in the gospel, claiming their place, affirmed by one another and by many openly pro-gay people who were there. Yes, my mother was there. And Jack was there too. He came with his wife, who had been such a good friend to him, his coming out, after many years of marriage. They've been through a lot together, and this was almost too good to be true. The bond Jack felt was almost instantaneous, and certainly it was love of God that bound them together. The community, the connections, the family. Jack could have burst for joy. At last, a place in his heart after years of anguish. At last, light, not darkness. Courage, not fear. At last, gay is good, giving voice to the truth of his life. The bulk of the church is wrong, giving voice to the hurt of his life. And Bonnie was there, many of the straight pro-gay persons in attendance. What happened to those three seminarians had so angered and upset her that she had come to embody a yes in the face of the bishop's no. It's the one thing for the church to take a stand, but at least the church could be consistent. Why did the same bishop who urged Bonnie's congregation to call an openly gay pastor just months before now refuse to recommend for call any openly gay seminarian? It's all so silly. These are my friends. They are already my pastors. Bonnie was there. The love of God brought her there, and her presence meant she cared. She wanted change. And Sid was there. For him, it was like a completing the circle. Growing up Lutheran, president of the Luther League, then off to California and a new life, a gay life. President of the Gay Business Association, and now here, gay and Lutheran. You can go home again, sort of. You can have a single life, a whole life of an integrated life. It's not easy, but you can be a Lutheran in the gay community and gay in the Lutheran community. Sid was there. Dan was there, and unlike Sid, Dan never left. He stayed at home, an abused child taking care of an abusive parent. An ACC, an adult child of the church. Two things filled Dan's mind lately. He was mad, and he was ready to get on with real gospel ministry. He was mad after giving his life in service to the church, he was still treated like scum. His life, his home, his spouse, his joy, and his passion were covered with a shroud of silence. In nearly every official turn, he and people like him were slapped, kicked, and stepped on, or at best ignored. It was time to do what was needed doing, and so Dan was there and ready to get on with it. And Ruby was there. She came because I invited her out of a sense of loyalty to me. She knew it was important to me, so she came. And she was amazed. See how they love one another? See how they sing and laugh and cry? Feel the passion of yearning to be free, an intense awareness of great love of Christ. Yes, you know you've been to church today. And Ruby sat there in the pew, her heart full, welled over with tears, as she thought of her son Tim, who was not there. Tim had died from AIDS, and he could not be there, but Ruby was there, standing witness. And of course, God was there, smiling God's biggest smile, belly laughing with a contagion that could fill the whole room of people. The scars on God's head and hands, side and feet, aching with empathy for the hurt for those who had gathered. God was there, really there, not simply in spirit, but in flesh incarnate, in the kisses, the hugs, the hands, the voices, the food, the person sitting next to me. God was there. And where were these people? They were at the worship service commemorating National Coming Out Day. A year ago, we were in Washington, D.C., out for the world to see, the biggest thing the Capitol had ever seen. And now it is time to let grace abound. It is time for gay people to build worshiping communities. It's time to bring God's good news, not the church's bad news, to the LGBTQ plus community. It is time to care for the kicked out, the runaway, the imprisoned, the friendless, the dying. It is time to celebrate what we have always been done. It is time to celebrate what has already been done. It is time to remember that we are the church. We are to celebrate God's gracious gifts, to proclaim the love, the life, and the grace of God at work within us in our community. We demonstrate the generous and gracious power, and the glory is ours when we come out and take the step, saying, "Here we are." We are gay and lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. We are friends of lesbian and gay and bisexual and transgenders. We are God's. We are the kingdom of Christ. The most precious grace God gives us is the grace to be ourselves. So now, it is time to let grace abound. Amen.